Welcome back. I'm Connie Sokol, your host of Call to Create, and it is such a joy today to have our beautiful, inspiring, lovely guest, Brooke Walker. Brooke, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, Connie, any chance to hang out with you is my treat. So I am so honored. Thank you for having me.
This is like old home week for me, I have to confess, because I've been doing Studio 5 for 18 years. Yeah. This for you, Brooke?
We are going into season 18.
Going into season 18. And it was right at the beginning. We'll talk about that in just a second, because these wonderful people at Studio 5 took such a chance on me, and they continue. I think it must be brownies that I'm bringing or something, but they continue to do that. But here I have gotten to be with Brooke every month for 18 years. And I just want to say, before I hit this bio, it's going to be a little more personal today. I'm just going to give you a heads up, and there may be some tears probably from me, but I just want to let you know, when we talk about being called to create, it is about being authentic and being our best selves in Him, and letting our light so shine so that people want to know about Him and are magnified in who they are because of Him. And I just want you to know that so often when we bring people on and we're interviewing, I get to personally attest to the fact that I'm embarrassing her, I know, that Brooke is that way, day in, day out. And anyone who's been on Studio 5, anyone who's connected with her in any form or fashion, that is what they would say, is that she is the same, whether she's on camera, off camera, with kids, changing a diaper, or changing out whatever the segment thing needs to be, or a mic. She is just that beautiful way of being the message that is goodness, just goodness. Oh. She's going to be like, just edit that out. But I just want to make sure.
Oh, that's so kind of you.
That we get that straight before I give the official bio. And again, a little caveat, this is going to be a little bit different segment than usual. It's going to be a little bit different episode. So strap in, because it's going to be a little bit more of this fun, authentic, get to know each other in a really different way, and being able to share tips and tools for you beautiful creatives in a way that we haven't done before. So let's get started. I'm going to give you the official bio, and then we're going to jump in. Brooke Walker is the host and executive producer of Studio 5 with Brooke Walker. She is an Emmy award-winning journalist and a member of the KSL News Team, where she contributes as an anchor and reporter. Brooke is also the host and executive producer of Family Rules on BYUtv and BYU Radio. A homegrown Utah girl, Brooke is actively involved in her community and enjoys speaking to local groups and organizations. She is proud of her work with a variety of charitable organizations, including Operation Smile and Primary Children's Hospital. Brooke attended Brigham Young University, where she studied broadcast communications, and prior to her time at KSL, Brooke worked for the Public Affairs Department of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Brooke loves learning, talking, listening, and sharing, and chocolate, and we love that together. And in that sense, she's deeply grateful for the front row seat to great conversations with great people. Her family fills her schedule and fills her. Brooke's most important and cherished titles are wife and mother. She and her husband, Mark, are the proud parents of Emmy, Boston, Lucy, and Penny. In her spare time, you can find Brooke cashing in on quality girl time with her 3 sisters, and also high on the list, shopping, working out, and as I said, anything chocolate. All right, so that's the official, right? So let's get to the nitty gritty. I want to start out, we're going to do a couple of takeaway things today, and kind of in that format of Studio 5, if you're familiar with it at all. But before we get to that, I do want to dive into, for just a minute, what even started you on this path? Because this has been a long and winding road in a beautiful way for you, but it seems a little bit the road less traveled, like a little bit unexpected. Can you take us back to that?
Yeah, totally unexpected. I mean, if I were to rewind it way back, my mom would tell you that I came to her in 8th or 9th grade and asked for an extended bedtime so I could stay up and watch the news. I don't remember that, but I did enjoy storytelling, and I had a grandma who was steeped in current events and always reading the newspaper and the headlines and talking to us about that. And so a natural kind of extension, I think, of just those human interests was journalism. And so when I went to BYU, I immediately declared I'd like to, study journalism. It was always just a path. And I did have some questions from my parents, and I appreciated the questions. Like, are you sure you don't want to be a teacher? I came from a long line of teachers, and the idea of broadcast journalism, I think, just seems so unrealistic and unattainable. And I get that. I look back now and I don't feel bitter toward kind of their attempt to redirect me at all, because I think they were spot on. And at the heart of it, what they knew is that I ultimately wanted to be a wife and a mother. And so I think they were trying to align those personal goals with this career, or not even a career, but this educational pursuit, and just thinking, do those really line up? And in my head, I didn't think they lined up either, but I didn't think it would matter. I think, let's get a good education, nothing wasted. Broadcast journalism felt like a natural extension of some of my strengths and interests while I was at BYU. And then please, yeah, let's just do the husband and the kid thing. That was really my, and I don't feel bad about saying that. I just was, what I would have planned for myself right out of college was not a career, it was a family, but that didn't happen. And so I did excel. I really kind of threw myself into broadcast journalism. The program at Brigham Young University is fantastic. So I had a lot of great opportunities there to travel abroad and to do some long form documentaries and to try my hand at a daily newscast. And I stumbled into an internship really quickly at the sophomore year. I started dipping my toe in some internships, and a couple of internships I took on turned into jobs. And so I was working before I even finished school, first at the church and then later at KSL. And I have to be careful in how I tell this story because I don't want it to sound too casual or there was a lot of luck involved. There was also a lot of hard work and even more gratitude. So I don't want to be too careless or casual in how I say it, but I did an internship at KSL and threw my heart into that. And on the last day of my internship, I remember going to the big boss and showing him my VHS resume tape, because that's what you do. I was still in school at the time. And so I bring out this rusty, dusty tape. I'm like, can you watch this? I didn't even know, Connie, what I was going to do with that tape, because I was a Utah girl. My family was here. Again, those personal goals hadn't really happened for me at my college experience. And so he sat back and he watched the tape. The whole tape, which they tell you they only watched the first 3 minutes. He watched the whole darn thing with me sitting right there. I remember my cheeks just being so hot, like, this is terrible. And then he leaned back in his big leather chair and he said, well, why don't you stick around? And I said, okay. I didn't know what that meant. I remember leaving the big office, the corner office, and calling my dad and saying, I think I just got a job. And my dad was like, honey, did they offer you money? Did they talk about a paycheck? I think in his head, he's thinking, this girl's just going to be a forever intern or a forever volunteer. And I said, no, Dad, I really think that was job talk, So it kind of just rolled out that way. And it was a job, thankfully. A paycheck did come eventually. But I started in the field just producing other people's stories. I would go out, do the interviews, log the tape, work with an editor to cut it into a 1:30 story. And then someone else would step in front of the camera and present my words and my work. And that was a great way in a larger market like Salt Lake City to cut my teeth and get some experience. And one day somebody was sick and the backup was sick. I mean, I'm giving you the condensed version here, but literally there was this little intern of a girl at the end of the row and they threw her out there to do a couple of breaking news stories that seemed to work out okay. I'm saying it quickly, but it actually happened quite quickly too. I was 21 years old when somebody called and said, do you want a screen test for this new project KSL is doing, this new lifestyle show called Studio 5? And I was like, okay. And one thing left to the next. And at 21 years old, I had this lifestyle show. I had no experience. I was green. I was terrible. And I don't say that in an effort to try to get, oh, I'm sure you were fine. Or I wasn't. I was not cut out. I was not in a place to fill that role, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And I did work hard along the way. And so I look back and I see those steps and think, how did that happen? How did that happen? So it was kind of wild in that way.
Oh my goodness. My soul is on fire as you're talking. And I love this. And I love how you share it. Sounds so serendipitous, but it actually did involve more pieces and moving parts. And yet this thread of him taking you on this path. And we talked before we got on and kind of this switch, this adjustment to call to create, of being led to create, because it seems like he has led you along, and you've been willing to go with it and say, okay. And even that, when you feel like starting out, you weren't perfect at it, you weren't even prepared for it, that you were just taking that next right step. I have to share a little personal moment here, because that is so signature to Studio 5. So working with Studio 5 for so many years, you and myself, but you in a much more amazing capacity. But my first season with Studio 5, you need to note that it was early days, right? And I'm talking to Michelle, the executive producer, and I'm like, oh, this is how I'd like the segment to go. Never done TV in my life. But that does not keep me from sharing an opinion. And I say, okay, in the 6-minute segment, I'll go on this side of the set, and then I can move and halfway through to this other side of the set. Can you see the problem with this? It's all over it.
Connie wanted to tap dance around the set with her little buffalo. No, I love you. I love you so much.
Here's the thing, the point that I want to make. this is such a beautiful fit for you with Studio 5, because this thing that you've been a part of for so many years and has shaped you and shaped so many of us as far as being, this is just like a beautiful part of our community. I look at how selective they have been. I look at how intentional they have been. And I look at how loyal they have been. And they have kept people for years, even when we were horrible at the start. It's just like you're saying, it was bad.
Yeah.
But I did not get the boot. And I look at that, and Brooke, you bring up such a beautiful point, which is that longevity, that long view, that they had this idea and they saw that potential in you, which of course was already quite formed. I'm just saying. But the fact that you could see that you had work to do, and they probably saw that, but they worked with it, and you kept being led along. And this is such an important thing for listeners as creatives. Sometimes in this fast food era, this Amazon drop it on your doorstep in 24 hours, we think that we start something and we've got to be amazing at it. And if not, then we're not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Did you ever have those moments where you were in the valley of, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I don't know if this is where I belong?
I'm going to answer very humbly, no. I never had moments where I questioned, like, do I belong? And I think I think there's a couple of reasons for that. You mentioned Michelle Torsak, who was the creator and executive producer of Studio 5. She did a beautiful thing and gave all of us a beautiful gift in the creation and inception of the show, in that she created a really strong brand identity about this show, what we were not. So it was super clear. The objectives were super clear. And I think with those strong guardrails, which is so crucial to any good creative project, I felt kind of protected in that lane. Like, I knew where we were going. So I think that gave me a charge of confidence. I think also we are so lucky to be able to do a show for women. Women see heart, women see effort, women see intention. And I think and hope and feel grateful that I think women saw the heart behind the project. And I will say, I really don't want to sound, again, too casual, because there was so much work. And I think it wasn't a why not. I think a lot of times when we talk about making those personal jumps or making those leaps, it's like, oh, why not? Let's try it. I was advised very early to replace the why not with hard work. And we did, Connie. We were looking at tapes, we were bringing in consultants, we were digging in and asking the hard questions of ourselves and of our work. And so I think by replacing, kind of the casual, well, why not? Let's give it a try, with, no, we're going to work at this. I think that provided some confidence as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is so vital. I love the point that you make for creatives. It's that niching down. If there's anything when I'm working with women that is the biggest struggle for them, and this goes across the board to men and women, is that they're afraid to niche down too much and they want to try to reach everybody. And I love how you brought up those guardrails, whether they're gospel guardrails or they're temporal guardrails, but being able to set those in motion very soon, who you are and who you are not. And I love that you brought that up, because once we know that, we more quickly resonate with our audience, with the people we want to work with the opportunities. They align quicker and they're more fulfilling because you're spot on in what it is that you're doing and what they need you to fill. So I just think that's a perfect point. Now, when you talk about, I just want to touch on this hard work for just a second more. With this hard work you've got at the beginning, I remember when I was doing Standing Up for the Church and I was talking with Bob Evans and we were on break and I had just been, randomly plucked and dropped into that. It was such a gift and a blessing. And it was such a random miracle. And I was talking about how I had wanted to be this, journalist, but I had done the motherhood thing and 7 kids and all of that. And he said, you're lucky. You're lucky because you missed the weekends and the holidays and all the grind. So was there that grind for you when you were in the intern and doing all of that? For those that are listening, and it does seem like very serendipitous, but let's talk about that hard work for a minute.
Yes, there was the grind. There were the early mornings and the late nights. There was the grunt work. There was the, driving tape back in the day. I remember I made a lot of treks, driving tape to the station, driving tape from the scene. There was a lot of logging. There was a lot of lunch runs. There was a lot of that. And it's interesting because I look back now and I think, and we always can. We can look back and see maybe a guiding path or God's hand in certain ways. But I could do that. And I did do that as a 20-something single. So it's interesting just to see now how my personal path has come. Not to say I paid my dues and checked the box, but I kind of paid my dues in my 20s really hard. And I'd like to think that those deposits or those efforts are now paying off in a more family-friendly schedule and opportunity now, which I am so deeply grateful for.
I love that. And let's segue to that because there's a couple more points that I want to have you weigh in on, but let's segue to that since you brought that up. Things shifted, right? Then now fast forward several years and now you've got kids, you've got 4 and you're doing the Studio 5 thing. How did that shift for you? How did you make that shift successfully? Because one child, two children, four, how did you make that shift?
Well, as you talk about, are there ever times that you questioned, or those valleys, as you call them? I think after every baby, there was that, just because family is my number one priority. And I think after every child, it was this question of, can I do this and keep my priorities in check and in place, and where I know they need to be for me to feel like I'm fulfilling what I was really sent here to do, which is to be a wife and a mother. And so to that, I just give great credit to my employer for working with me. It was 10 years ago when I first started to make these requests to help support, my motherhood priority along with this professional opportunity. And 10 years ago, and things have changed a lot in the last little while, and there is more flexibility now than there was then. I feel like I was asking for a lot then. And now the asks, I think, are a little more mainstream and a little more expected. And I'm grateful that there has been that shift so that women can, keep those priorities and also pursue these creative goals too. But I do think there's a constant motive check. And I think as any creative, there has to be early on. And I was debating if I was going to share this story or not, because it's kind of cringy, but I'm gonna, because it's you, Connie. It's just me and you, right? It's just me and you, sister. But I remember early on, I was out to lunch, and I won't name names here, but with a mentor, an esteemed, respected journalist, a woman I had looked up to for years and years, who was refined and polished and beautiful and wonderful and everything you would think about an accomplished, successful woman. We were out to lunch. Again, I was an intern at this time, so we're talking 20 years ago. And she was kind of just talking to me loosely about the industry. And I remember in between a bite of salad, I can picture exactly where we were. She said something that was so startling to me. She said, anyone in this industry is 10% vain. And I remember being like, what? First of all, did you just say that about yourself? Second of all, as I set out to, dip my toe in this industry, did you just say that about, I am not, vanity is not. And I think back on that a lot, only because I think that motive check is so important. I think a lot of times we can say, oh, we feel compelled to do this, or we feel even called to do this. And it's that natural man check of, why am I really? And her point was kind of an interesting one. Like, if you're setting out to be a journalist, you're setting out to be a storyteller, you're setting out to share information, there are plenty of ways to do that without putting your face in front of it. But I've thought about that a lot. Just as the years have progressed and the babies have come, I think you have to, as a creative, constantly check that motivation. Like, is this really what I have to contribute? Is this really what lines up with my core priorities? And so I think that continuous motive check has helped my priorities stay solid as well.
Oh, genius. So beautiful. It made me think of President Hinckley. It said, you're going to get a lot of adulation. Don't take it in, right? Just don't. It's the same thing with the speaking industry. It's the same thing. What compels who to get on stage and think you have something to share, right? And then you go to the opposite extreme of imposter syndrome and all that. I love that you bring that up. And I love this motive check idea, because otherwise you can start checking for the likes or the texts that say that was so wonderful. Or did you get anybody standing in line waiting after? Or did somebody say something about your segment? Or you can get caught up in that world so easily.
And you're caught up in that world while you're still doing good. I mean, what you're putting out is wonderful, and the light that you're bringing is great. But at the end of the day, it becomes, does that really line up with my priorities and what I was truly sent here, godly sent here, divinely sent here to do? And I've never actually said that conversation out loud, but I think about that a lot. Like, what is motivating me to continue to do this? And for me, it's an opportunity to share gifts, to share talents, but most of all, to provide for my family. And that doesn't sound very fun and attractive, but that's a worthy goal too, to help provide for my family in doing something I love and hopefully sharing light along the way.
And the way that you've been able to involve them. I mean, even just my most recent segment, my little guy was home summer and I brought him up to Studio 5 and nobody blinked an eye. And everyone was so gracious and kind, talking directly to him. Hey, how are you doing? How's school? Are you excited about school coming up? And it's such that environment there that you can tell everyone is intentionally making it that kind of a space where it is the motive check. It is the guardrails. It is staying aligned with that. And you make up a point. You've mentioned tightening your feedback circle. And I think that helps with that motive check as well. Talk to us about the benefit of tightening that feedback circle.
I learned that early on as well. They were bringing in so many fantastic consultants and outside voices. And what you realize is only so many people share your piece of the pie, meaning there are only so many voices or lenses that are going to see this opportunity or see this project with the priorities and with the goals that you do. And so I think to close in that feedback circle and identify a few key people who can, provide honest feedback, meaningful feedback, I would say though, keep a critic in that circle, someone who's not afraid to say what you don't want to hear or what other people are a little more timid to say. Keep someone who's going to check the priorities, check your motives, and also give you that honest feedback that could be hard to hear. But ultimately, I think there's truth in most feedback, even though sometimes it doesn't land as a warm and fuzzy. And so I tightened that feedback circle early with women and mentors that I knew wanted the best for me and saw the best in me. But I kept one or two voices around that sometimes I didn't love to hear, just for that balance and just for that check.
So smart. I've heard that you always keep someone on hand that would tell you what you really look like in the bathing suit. So then you can decide, right? You can decide, hey, my stomach's all over the place, but I'm owning it. It's good.
Yeah.
But I love that. And you think about that. Elder Christofferson even said, even in criticism that you're getting, sift for the truth that is in there. And I agree. I think it makes you sharper. And I think generally speaking, the more hot button it feels inside, the more you react with what? I think the more it compels you to need to look at that and find the root of that. And that can shift things. I know sometimes when I receive that kind of feedback, and especially from someone that I love and trust, then I know that that's in my best interest. And it's actually made a great shift. It's been a small and simple thing, but it's made a great shift. So I love that you bring that up. I know that you've got so many memories and so many guests. Are there any, I'd love to kind of share really quick, just like a keeper moment that was such a wonderful, great one. And then maybe a blooper moment that was just a funny or something that stands out, that was a learning moment or a blooper moment that has stayed with you. Do either of those come to mind?
I mean, does a blooper moment come to mind? Does a blooper moment come to mind? Yeah. I remember there was a moment, and this isn't maybe the slap your knee funny kind of a blooper, but there was a moment early on where I asked her something and she just froze in this moment of complete television fright. I mean, deer in the headlights, eyes glazed over, mouth hanging open. And it was this awkward, a beat of silence in television feels like a year of silence in television. And this beat lasted a good 7 to 10 seconds. And I started to kind of play charades, like, sounds like, is this trying to anticipate what she might have wanted to say? And in that moment, I remember just feeling compelled to really know women, really know the audience. Not that I have to know exactly what someone was going to say, what or when, but I remember thinking you've got to know women in a way that you can represent women and sometimes even speak for women. In that moment, that guest was not saying anything, and part of television is having to talk. So I use that as a catalyst to try to really know the women that we're serving and the women that we're talking to and the women that we're presenting to. And I feel like I do have that viewer connection kind of ingrained in me. And it's always a good kind of heartwarming check when we get those flesh to flesh interactions on the aisle of Target, or when I'm out at the grocery store and someone comes up and I feel that kinship with women. And I'm grateful for that little moment, that awkward moment, as painful as it was. Yes, it made the blooper reel. Yes, it was terrible. But that idea that know enough that you can speak up and say, and always have something to say that represents the person you're standing next to or the person that you're speaking to. And that's, I think, opened my lens and opened my dimension to other people, other stories, other experiences, other ways. And I feel I appreciate that. I appreciate that connection, kind of woman to woman, that this show has allowed us to form.
Oh, and it's so good. And I remember it was in a show with Robert Redford and Michelle Pfeiffer, and it's Up Close and Personal, I think. And it's about her being a journalist. And I remember she does a test and he gets done and he says she eats the lens. And I feel that way about you, where it's like you just come through and you're sitting in that living room with that woman. And that really is a gift that you have. And for creatives listening, I think it's so vital to never lose sight of that audience member, that one. Elder Bednar is always talking about the one. Never lose sight of that one. Now, since you brought this up, let's hold it for a second on that awesome experience, that maybe one of those memory maker experiences. I want to talk about really quickly, because our time is shortening. How has that been, being so well known and doing the family life and church callings and all of those things? I've thought about that over the years, Brooke. I've thought about you, of how you navigate that, of not letting outside pressures, or if I make a mistake, or I don't, do this right, or my yard looks yucky, or my kids do whatever. How have you navigated that reality that is a big concern for a lot of creatives, of, if I get more well known, how much more judged am I going to be?
That's such a good question. That is such a good question. And it's an interesting question from a timing perspective. We just moved. So we're just in a new neighborhood, trying to make new friends and new connections. And I will say sometimes I feel like maybe this is just self-interpreted. It's a little bit of a hurdle when people think they already know you or they assume things about you. And so I always say it sometimes feels harder to make friends for that reason, just because I think once people realize that my job is the least interesting thing about me, we're able to make that connection. I sometimes feel bad if I'm sensing someone struggling to know how to talk about the job or if they should talk about the job. And the thing I just want to talk about is what we have in common, which is usually kids and family and the real life side of it. Once we're able to break past that barrier, but I will say it's so wonderful to have friends everywhere, to feel that kind of connection and that kinship, and not to be too personal, but it's especially tender and touching to me in the temple when these sweet women come up to me and know you, when you're in this heavenly atmosphere, right? This very pure and familiar and warm physical location, and someone comes up and knows you, knows your name, and can connect with you. That's a very heavenly feeling. And as we're sent here to be brothers and sisters, as we're sent here to be, God's children on the earth in Christ's hand, as we're sent here to just be one, it's actually a really lovely thing to feel like you have those connections everywhere you go. So not to take it too sappy, but I do appreciate those sisterly connections everywhere. And it's kind of a warm blanket that follows you wherever you go, even the grocery store.
I so appreciate that, because I think sometimes people who are more high profile, they worry maybe about coming off a certain way or whatever. But I remember being in the temple and meeting Liz Lemon Swindle, but I couldn't place her because, you don't usually see the artist so often, but I couldn't place her. And I was like, where do I know you from? And there was this half a beat, and she kind of looked at me and smiled, and she said, I do some work for the church. And then she kind of moved me on, right? Like, I know where we are and I'm keeping this place and this focus, but she didn't just go, oh, no. She acknowledged it, and she gave me a little bit of that wink and that warmth, and then was like, and we're all here for this particular reason, right? And it was so tender, and I loved it. All right, let's circle back, bookending with, is there a moment? I know there's so many, it's so hard. As soon as someone says that, it's like, what's your favorite movie? You're like, I hate that. Like, no way can I even tell you that. But it doesn't have to be your favorite memory, but just a memory that comes to mind that for whatever reason, it was a memory maker, or it was something that was really meaningful to you.
That is such a good question and such a hard question. I will say 10 years ago, there was a shift in kind of our show direction. And with that kind of came a shift in, I don't want to say tone, because we're still delivering on the same, brand promises and the same conversation and topics, but there, and it complemented, I guess, a movement that was happening across the board, which is this authenticity movement, where everyone was just saying, let's open it up. Let's just be real. And I feel like that rippled into our show in a really profound way. And I don't know if you'd agree with this, Connie, but I feel like in the last 10 years, for whatever reason, maybe it's the authenticity movement, maybe it's just our comfort as show presenters and show hosts, but we cry on set. We tingle up on set. It just feels like in the last 10 years, there's been a settling of heart or spirit, but real things are being said on set, and real things I hope are being felt through the screen as well. So I don't know if I can pinpoint one exact moment, only that as I sit in that studio, truth is truth. And as I sit in that studio, I hear women testify, and we sometimes save that word for the pulpit or for more sacred, formal situations or experiences. But I love just settling in that chair now and listening to women testify. Again, that can just be sharing truth of anything, of any topic. But with that, when you're able to just feel the kind of things we normally feel as we're sharing and cracking our hearts open, I think that is like creativity at its best. It is when our hearts are on the line, the goosebumps are chasing down our arms, and we're swiping tears from our eyes, and hopefully not in a sappy, like, am I watching a Hallmark movie or am I watching a lifestyle show? I think we maintain a somewhat of a professional line there, but it's really been tender for me to kind of watch these women as we've grown up together and our lives have progressed together, and our viewers' lives are experiencing the same evolution. And I hope that they're taking those same kind of feelings away through the screen. But it's been really neat. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what came
spot on. And I've had these going throughout our time together today. Goosebumps off my arm. And I go back to early days. This was back before the tearing up was okay. And I am a tearer upper when there's a time and a moment when that happens and when we feel it. And you and I have experienced that on set together. And from the get-go, I was never made to feel like you can't do that, even before it became an official maybe movement. And that's
Well,
what
I'll give you credit. I think you gave us permission, Connie. I think you did. I think you were probably one of our first little criers, and I applaud you for that. And now I don't even apologize for it. Now I just wipe my eyes and occasionally my nose and trust women at home are feeling the same thing. And that is a beautiful shared circle. So I'll thank you for that.
Okay. Well, I got to tell you that it comes full circle because with this podcast, I'm trying to be all professional and talking to Steve Young and Molly Bonner and all of that. And you can't help it. There's moments when they are shared. And I think if anything, again, a gratitude of when we're creatives, create that safe space for that authentic expression. And we don't have to be highfalutin to share something of professional value, that it's people and connection. And because you created that space, I feel like that's what we've been able to do here. And people have gone with that. And even though we're interviewing high profile people, we have had the tears, we've had the laughter and all the things. And that's what people want, this genuine connection at the end of the day, that we're all in this journey together. I feel like cue High School Musical, but we're all in this together and we're all wanting a shared genuine experience. And we just get to have the opportunity to be more media about it. I love that you shared that movement. And I just feel like that was so symbolic of what a lot of people have felt, like you said many years ago, of we need to shift this to this authenticity. So those that are listening, I invite you to take that thought of how can I be more authentic in my expression and really not be afraid to have all the feels that go in there, not excessively, but all the feels that go in there that are appropriate to the thing that you're creating and not hold back when it should be a part of it. Brooke, I've had all the feels. I've had the tears. I was trying not to wipe it and saw the mascara in the corner. I've had all the feels today, just like usual. This has been so beautiful. Thank you for all that you do and have shared.
Thank you. And I love the purpose of this podcast. I think whether you're called to create, or in my case, maybe led to create, I think if you're doing so with the right motives and the right intentions, I can testify that God will lead you and pave that path and open up great opportunities that hopefully allow you to do what you feel called to do and maybe do what you're led to do as well. Connie, I adore you. Thank you so much.
Right back at you. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. And for those that are listening and you have felt all the feels like we have, feel free to check out some of those other interviews that have all of those experiences in them. Beautiful, wonderful people, Steve Young, Jane Clayson Johnson, John Heater of Napoleon Dynamite, all of these wonderful people who, again, are sharing all of their personal experiences to help you on your journey to be called or led to create.